I don't think there's much more to say other than that I have been writing about transport off and on for many years. I have a theory that I was just discussing with Magda Kopczynska, that this is the real powerhouse of EU policy areas that is often overlooked because it really drives literally what we are doing in Europe. Is also critical to the fight against climate change, and it's also a big topic for how we as Europeans interface with the rest of the world too. So it really is a major area. It's also somewhat funny that I begin this conference today bringing Magda Kopczynska onto stage, because I hosted a debate almost 10 years ago with Magda in which I massively mispronounced her name, so I hope I've done a better job this time. I'd like to welcome Magda Kopczynska, the Director General of DG Move, to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. You got the name right. Thank you so much. That's already a good start for me. Thank you so much for having me here. And indeed, 10 years is a long time. I wasn't Director General for DG Move at that moment, in case you were wondering. But I did work on transport, and I was just thinking ahead of this keynote that I'm a bit struggling with how to address the main question, because I appreciate the question on how we can accelerate the decarbonization of transport, and I appreciate the question not being whether decarbonization of transport still matters. I very much hope, looking at the program of the conference today and the speakers who are here today, that you will say what I want to say in the opening. That what we have put on the table over the last couple of years when it comes to decarbonization of transport, or should I say it bigger, decarbonization of European economy, remains important, and the course we made for ourselves in the European Union is still valid. We need the adjustments that we are putting in place, but we really cannot go away from that course. One of the reasons being was that the deal, I like to think, we made with industries in Europe, that we agree that this is the path we are following when it comes to decarbonization of different transport modes. We made this deal. We create a framework where you work, where you thrive in, where you succeed, and we keep that framework in place. But I'll get to that later. Josh mentioned that transport is important for European economy, or for any economy as such. And I think for that reason, stability when it comes to transport, predictability, how transport can and needs to be organized, is important for businesses, but it's also important for people. And I think this question of acceleration when it comes to clean mobility is a topic that we know the ingredients, and I hope you will confirm in the course of today, of the event today, that those ingredients are the right one. We need more zero-emission vehicles, and when I say vehicles here, I go beyond road transport. I also think about ships, I also think about planes. We need more sustainable fuels to power those vehicles and to power transport as such. We need better, more adjusted infrastructure that will support that transition. And obviously, we also need a conviction in the society at large that those choices that will lead to cleaner, greener, more sustainable mobility are choices they want to do, also in terms of how they move around, how the cargo is being moved around. I'll start with e-mobility, because it is a topic that is very high on the agenda. Not only in DG Move, not only in the European Commission, but also across EU member states and in the European Parliament. Today we have more than 11 million electric vehicles, battery electric and plug-in hybrid, on Europe's roads. We can discuss whether it's a lot, whether it's a sufficient number, whether we should have more. But what is as important for me is that we have over 1 million public recharging points available across the EU. And those recharging or charging points are critical, because I do remember, having been in European transport policies as long as I have been, that 14, 15 years ago, we had this big discussion. What comes first, charging infrastructure or vehicles? And I think we decided at the Commission level that we will take care of what we can take care of, namely public infrastructure that will push for that, for the charging being deployed across the EU, and it is coming. We have a financing mechanism in place that supports it. We have a buy-in from companies that are deploying those recharging infrastructure elements. And we also have support from European industries that are coming up with faster and faster charging vehicles that will break that barrier of thinking that an electric vehicle is too complicated to use because you waste your time when you're charging it. We all know that this is no longer the case, and even more positive developments are coming. But I did mention at the beginning that we look at things that maybe need to be adjusted, or maybe where our focus needs to be stronger. Hence the Industrial Automotive Action Plan that we put on the table in March this year. We are looking at the CO2 standards, and you know that this is one of those topical discussions that are important, and you also know that I can't share with you what will be the ultimate outcome of those discussions. When the outcome is there, you will know. We are also working on a proposal to support bigger uptake of corporate fleets, of green corporate fleets. And this is also a topic where I can't tell you more, but once the Commission is ready, you will hear all about it. We are working on a battery booster package to make sure that this important element of electric cars, the battery value chain, is improved. Again, topic that has been on the agenda not just those last couple of months, but for quite a while. Again, all that shows that when it comes to automotive sector, we look at different elements that will support European industries, but will also support green electric mobility in the EU. Coming back to the charging infrastructure, DG Move is responsible for alternative fuels infrastructure regulation, which we will, the review of which we plan to present by the end of 26. It's always risky when I give those dates, because then maybe we slip 1 month either direction, but this stems from the regulation itself. We promised when it was agreed that we will see what's the situation with the uptake of the charging infrastructure. We'll analyze it and we'll come up with an adjusted regulation if needs be, as I said, end of 26. And in parallel and much earlier, Commission is putting on the table the grids package, still be early next year, I think. And grids package is important because one big message that we are hearing from the automotive industry, especially when it comes to heavy-duty vehicles, is that it's not enough to have the charging infrastructure constructed. This charging infrastructure has to be properly connected to the grid, has to have priority access to electricity, because otherwise the whole concept of having infrastructure in place will not be sufficient. And also for that reason, we launched the Clean Transport Corridor Initiative a couple of months ago, where several member states along one of our TEN-T corridors agreed to work faster to speed up planning, permitting, construction of infrastructure, of recharging points, and also to accelerate deployment of zero-emission trucks along that corridor. Again, to treat it a bit as a test ground to see whether we can point to specific elements that have to be addressed and maybe sped up across the entire EU. I'm very happy that this is a bit of a volunteer approach from member states. And I will talk about another example where member states are stepping up beyond what is simply required by EU legislation. I need to mention Weights and Dimensions Directive. I want to mention it for two reasons. First of all, it's an important piece of legislation to make sure that zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles are not disadvantaged when it comes to the cargo they can take. The Council agreed on general approach last week Thursday during the Transport Ministers' meeting. It will not come as a surprise that European Commission is not entirely happy with the outcome of the Council. We thought Council could be a bit more ambitious. Council could take a bit more of what we put on the table. But I'm very happy that today, exactly today, this afternoon, we are kicking off the first trilogue on weights and dimensions. And I hope that between the Council and Parliament, as it often happens, the outcome of those negotiations will be closer to Commission original proposal. But it's an interesting case, this weights and dimensions proposal, because this is something we have been trying to amend for quite a while as European Commission. You might know about it. And I really think it's this dimension of electric, heavy-duty vehicles that finally allowed for this proposal to move on at all. There have been a lot of resistance to coming up with something when it comes to electric trucks. So that's about road transport. Moving to another important mode, aviation. One of those two modes that are trickier to decarbonize, if I may say so, because with everything that needs to be still looked into, electromobility is definitely the way forward for road transport. When it comes to aviation and shipping, of which I will speak briefly at the end as well, the only alternative that we have at this moment in time for bigger planes is to go in the direction of sustainable aviation fuels. You know everything about Refuel EU Aviation, the targets that are there, the fact that it's being implemented and put in place as it comes. And I really think this is an example of a piece of legislation where we created the framework, we provided the target, and we offered as much flexibility as we believed is necessary at the beginning to make sure that the regulation delivers, that we gradually build up the uptake of those sustainable aviation fuels so that they start fueling aviation long-term and large-scale. One element that we put on the table on the 5th of November, Sustainable Transport Investment Plan, is looking at what still needs to be done to boost the production of alternative fuels in aviation. And this boosting of production of sustainable aviation fuels, and sustainable fuels for maritime, by the way, because that's what STIP is about, is important for two reasons. First of all, we want to make sure that the right type of sustainable fuels for aviation is available for aviation. But we also would like to see that production picking up in the EU. And that's the main part of STIP, to see what can be done so that production really kickstarts in Europe. If you look globally, there are parts of the world, China is one, Brazil is another one, where they really go big time when it comes to production of sustainable fuels for aviation. In Europe, it's happening, but it needs to be happening faster. And where it certainly needs to be happening faster is the synthetic fuels for aviation. We have a target of 0.7 that is mandatory as of 2030. And for now, we are really lagging behind with production for eSAFs. I hope that the plan that we put in place when it comes to the financing, mobilizing private capital, working with European Investment Bank, but also commercial banks, to offer a bit more financial predictability for that production will do the trick. But I'm really being very open here. We need to see that production happening. And for that reason, I'm really impressed that also in the last Transport Council, we had 8 EU member states who signed up so-called eSAF Early Movers Coalition, again on a completely volunteer basis. Commissioners sent a letter to all of them and invited them to consider that. And in the end, they agreed to confirm their commitment. The idea is to mobilize at least 500 million euro to support large-scale eSAF projects and accelerate their deployment. And I know that it sounds pretty general, but there is a very, very specific thing that they have to do. We need to go for those double-sided auctions. First one expected in 2026, which should give producers long-term revenue certainty while also creating a market that will start being competitive, because it's only the competitive market that will start bringing the price for eSAFs down. And again, kudos to the 8 member states that decided to have the minister there and sign their name and say, we take this eSAF challenge seriously. And we also see it as a possible and good business opportunity, not just when it comes to aviation, but also when it comes to creating long-term independence, energy and fuel independence in the EU. And of course, work that we have been doing with, for example, Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking also fits into this topic of decarbonizing aviation, because we are also working, or industry is working, on getting us to zero-emission electric planes that are in the making, not immediately, not tomorrow, but they have very specific years that they want to look into. I promised I will mention maritime just briefly. A similar situation to aviation, regulatory framework in place, Fuel EU Maritime with specific targets, working in sync with European ETS. At the end of February, we'll be putting on the table 2 strategies, one for ports and one industrial maritime strategy, which will also look at what needs to be done to support that sector when it comes to decarbonization. On the one hand, support to ports, which are energy hubs, which want to do more when it comes to production of green energy, but also being the suppliers of green energy. On the other side, what can we do more to support the maritime industrial cluster in Europe? Like in aviation, a lot of global leaders are still in Europe. They are producing planes in the case of aviation, specialized ships in the case of maritime, and a lot of industrial components. And this topic of competitiveness of transport industries is definitely one that is much more strongly visible now than it had been there before. I will not talk a lot about rail in this context because this is a mode that comes a lot when we are talking about decarbonization, but 3 things I wanted to mention: rail capacity regulation, a relatively technical, sometimes complex, but extremely important one in terms of regulatory framework that we put in place and that was agreed by Council and Parliament a couple of weeks ago, when we simply decided to convince member states that by organizing rail transport differently, we can get this extra capacity that will allow us to put more trains, including cargo trains, on tracks, and with that support modal shift. It sounds simple, but those of you who know the rail world, nothing is simple in the rail world. So I'm very happy that the rail capacity regulation is now becoming a law. We put on the table the high-speed rail action plan, also on the 5th of November, an extremely ambitious vision of connecting European major cities with high-speed rail by 2040. If you've read it, you've seen the big numbers in terms of budget. You've also seen that we are very clear we are not expecting all that money to come from from public sources, sorry. It's about mobilizing a private budget as well. So an important element of that strategy will be indeed discussing with rail companies and also with national governments financing strategy for that high-speed rail, because without getting a truly high-speed rail network in the EU for passengers, this choice for people in terms of which mode they want to use will not really be that well functioning. And we are working on the ticketing package that will come let's say first half of 2026. And the idea is to make sure that when you want to travel by train, you really have a choice, you really have good information, and you have places where you can really look at buying all your tickets in one place and simply using the digital technologies to make it faster and easier. And just the very last point I wanted to make, and I know I'm beyond my assigned 15 minutes, but I would like to just say a short word about international. Because when it comes to transport, European transport industries also function globally. Some of the transport modes are international modes, such as maritime or aviation. And we cannot really think seriously about decarbonizing transport if we don't take the global dimension into consideration. When it comes to maritime and aviation, the 2 UN bodies are the right places where we want to discuss things and we want to make things move. When it comes to International Civil Aviation Organization, I think we are there with how CORSIA is being gradually supported by more and more ICAO member countries. Where there's a discussion how to make CORSIA stronger and more ambitious. When it comes to International Maritime Organization, of course, the discussion and what happened in October in the MEPC was disappointing. We were hoping that the net zero framework will be adopted by the IMO, but we are now looking into what needs to be done on the European side, but also with our partners globally, to make sure that the discussion on decarbonization of shipping continues. It's complicated. The discussions in October were beyond, I'm being very, very diplomatic here using the word complicated. It was a difficult situation for an important UN body, but I very much hope that we will find a way to not only continue working as us in Europe, but also to get a group of partners worldwide that will join us in working on this decarbonization of shipping. And I really stop here, even though I could have gone for another 10 minutes, but then I would really be kicked out of here. But thank you so much for allowing me to address you, and good luck with the conference.
Wonderful. That really did cover a lot of ground in a very relatively short period of time. So thank you, Magda. Also, I think some critical information on scheduling for next year for what's coming along the track, and some very diplomatically phrased language around the recent decisions at the IMO, and also about the prospects of through ticketing legislation, which is going to be easier said than done at the EU level next year too. So now we're going to have a quick musical interlude while they move the chairs around, and I'll hand over to Jack Parrock for an hour, who's going to lead the conversation. After that, Stefano Porcello will take you to lunch with a debate on shipping and aviation. So thank you for coming again, and yeah, continue the conversation.
Okay, good morning everyone. We've worked out our seating. Wonderful to see so many people here. Please feel free to come in, take a seat. There's obviously these seats down here at the front if you want. As said, my name is Jack Parrock. I'm a Brussels-based moderator working with Euractiv. Delighted to have been asked along to come and lead this first panel here at the Transport Policy Conference. The first thing to say is that throughout all of the panels today, the three panels, you will be able to ask your questions using the Slido tool. So you can either go to slido.com, or if you're sat in the room here, there's a sort of business card on your chair that has the information on it. And the hashtag for that is Policy Conference. Put that in, you'll be able to get onto the website, the Slido website, which will allow you to put questions, and I will see them on my pad. And also, that's for everybody who's joining us online. You can ask questions that way as well. So a big welcome to everybody who is following this conference online. Okay, so let's get into this. As was said, this first discussion is going to be about decarbonizing road transport, essentially, and then we will have an aviation discussion and a shipping discussion. And I'm delighted to be joined here by Beatrice Coda, who is the Head of Unit for Clean Energy Transitions in DG RTD of the European Commission. It's wonderful that you're here. I have Zala Tomasic, who is an MEP, a member of the MV Committee in the European Parliament from Slovenia. Francois Calfon, who is an MEP, a member of the TRAN Committee in the European Parliament from France. Wonderful to see you. Lucia Mathieu, who is the Director for Cars at Transport and Environment. And Elena Fernandez-Rodriguez, who's the Chairwoman of Post Europe, the Board of Directors there. It's wonderful to have all of you up here with us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to come and join this important discussion. Let's start with you, Beatrice. We heard quite a lot from Magda there about the overarching picture, but perhaps you can take us a little bit more into the policy landscape, specifically from DG RTD's point of view, what you're working on, where you're looking at trying to encourage what has been accused of a slightly sluggish uptake in a transition towards carbon neutrality on European roads.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, hope you can hear me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Let's start. What is the policy landscape? I think Magda already, let's say, put it everything in the context. We have renewable energy directive targets that support electrification, but we also have, in particular, in the road transport, as far as we can see. But we also have the necessity to decarbonize the shipping and the aviation. So we have additional, let's say, a policy framework put by the refuel in aviation and refuel in maritime. And I want to stress that, let's say, these two, electrification and sustainable fuels, overall, as a, let's say in the overall policy context, they are not, let's say they are still complementary solutions. Also when it comes, in broader terms, when it comes also to road transport. So from the point of view, so this is, let's say, the big policy context, and from the point of view of, let's say, the research and innovation activities in mobility and transport to deliver the ambitious EU policy objectives, I think we look at a broad range of solutions. So beside, I think, looking at, you know, let's say, zero-emission vehicles or vessels, green infrastructure, traffic management, and innovative service, I think an important point here is really what we do to decarbonize the fuels and what technology we want to push further with the research and innovation. So decarbonizing the energy input of our transport, let's say, modes is really key and is one really of the bottlenecks. You also heard from Magda that, you know, we look very closely and more at the competitiveness of our industries. You've heard about the automotive action plan, and I want to highlight already that there is one specific action in the automotive action plan that looks at that looks also at R&I to further enhance the competitiveness of our transport mode. In particular, we have stronger, we are putting in Horizon Europe over the last 3 years 1 billion euro to finance topics for what concerns battery production for vehicles, but also zero-emission mobility topics and connected and automatic driving. And we recently, let's say, we recently pushed for our 3 public-private partnerships working on these areas, which are the 2-0 partnership, the BAT4U partnership, and the CCAM partnership, to work together towards enhancing coordination and aligning the strategic priorities towards the competitiveness of the automotive industries. Additionally, there are also topics, but perhaps we can take it on a second question, concerning the decarbonization of fuels like hydrogen, and renewable fuels, which, as I mentioned, they will be also, let's say, in some parts also for road transport, very critical to be addressed. But we can perhaps, let's say, touch upon later. And
I mean, there's calls from the industry for that neutrality of technology as well. Zala, let's come to you. I think what's interesting, if we start with a perspective from the member states a little bit and connect to the situation of decarbonization in a country like Slovenia and how that connects with EU policy at the moment.
Well, right now it doesn't. I come from a country where we are below average compared to the rest of the member states, but I would say it's similar for the rest of the Eastern Europe or any small transit-dependent country, because if you look at a map, Slovenia is positioned strategically, geopolitically, right at the crossroads, so transit is extremely important for us. But I was just looking at numbers for 2024, we actually had a decline of the purchases of EVs by 27%. So in 2024, there were about 54,000 new cars registered in Slovenia, out of which EVs were about 4,000 vehicles. So we're clearly not where we are supposed to be if we want to reach the EU goals. And I know that everyone's going to ask me now, but why is that? And I think, you know, when we're having this discussion, there's not one simple answer that I say, oh, we just need to fix infrastructure and then that's going to be, because it is a multitude of different things kind of tying it together. One is definitely the infrastructure. I think we don't have it anywhere in the EU. We are lacking. And there, then myself and Mr. Kafon, we actually worked together on the electric vehicle supply equipment, and we just finished our first trialogue, and that is, just so that you'll know, that is the standards for the EU for charging stations. So only right now, we're setting the standards for this charging station for the EU. So I think this is a big thing, yet we're requiring companies to do that. But I would say then affordability. And another thing, and this is a theory I have, why certain countries are performing much worse when it comes to purchasing of EVs, and I would love to hear everyone else's opinion, is that for Slovenia, we don't really have company cars. Majority of people buy their own car. I know for Belgium, because I know the situation here. Almost any of my peers, they get a car at work. In Slovenia, that is not the case. So it is a big difference. When you have an average salary in Slovenia, the net salary is about 1,600 euros, and you need to buy your own car, and you need to buy for your own fuel. So I think all of this together kind of leads us to this point, but like I said before, it is not because we wouldn't want to get there. We want to take care of our environment. We want to take care of our climate. So it's not the part of unwillingness, and I don't think it's a part of unwillingness when it comes to the auto manufacturer of the companies or anything. It's just the demand right now is simply not there.
It's a really interesting point, because also that cars that come with the job in Belgium is not always considered a particularly positive thing, because then it shifts how people are able to do it. What's the right policies around this stuff? Francois Calfon, France is a different situation. You're a car-making country. Can you perhaps explain the situation in France a little bit, again, how that's interacting with EU policy? Because there's overall trade concerns as well around.
Of course, we win a lot of cars in France, but not so much, because a big part of the national brand are built, of course, in Europe, but also in Africa. So it's not so easy even in France. But I want to be focused on the debate, about the debate at this time. The debate at this time, what is it? Because, of course, all the answers are very complex, but we have to be focused on the simple idea. The simple idea is the neutral situation in 2050. But if we continue like this, and we see at the Council that 5 countries support to make a stop, to make a pause inside the Green Deal, we can be at the target of 2050. So if I say that, I say nothing. How to do, how to manage the balance between the health of automotive industry, even in France, because we have a lot of difficulties, and the target of carbon neutrality in 2050. It's the main question. So we did some mistakes in automotive industry. First is to build SUVs, big cars, very expensive, you mentioned. And as Ford said, when he built the Ford T, he built the cars for the workers. Or at this time, not only in Slovenia, but also in France, workers, and even workers who earn a lot of money, can't buy new cars. At this time, 5 years ago, the middle age of the cars was 7 years. At this time in France, it's 13 years. And only 1.7% of families can buy new cars at this time, because the new cars, even small cars, if you take the new Renault 5 with iconic cars like Fiat 500 in Italy, the new Renault 5 is 30,000 euros. It's impossible to buy it. So we have to, and I come to the European issue, to modify the CAFE norm to support small cars. And we have, and the automotive industry, and even the European Commission have to support this target, as von der Leyen says in her speech just 1 month ago, to build new small cars. And to build small cars is to support it inside the CAFE regulation, and it's to be careful with the evolution of regulation. You want, I stop my speech, but I finish my idea, and after we can talk about a lot of things. But if we take the evolution of regulation, safety evolution of regulation, safety evolution of regulation from Commission, the cost of the car is higher year per year. And for one dispositif of safety, the cost for one car is 2,000 euros more. And if you take 5 years, the regulation and the progression of the safety regulation cost for each car like 10,000 euros. And if you consider that the target is to sell cars 10,000 euros or 20,000 euros, it's impossible. So we have to change our mindset. And of course, the main goal is to sell small cars for the workers, but of course we have to support because 60% of the sales are in the corporate fleet, to support corporate fleet, and to support, at this time, it's not the choice of the Commission to support, it's the choice of the DG Move, but not all the Commission, to support decarbonization of corporate fleet. But there is a lot of examples, but you want to have a debate, so I stop my speech at this time.
Let's come back to it. I mean, it's also no coincidence we sit here in a place of the history of cars displayed behind us.
I prefer to mention clear target,
yeah.
Because of course there is the question of infrastructure, the question of and biofuel, but for our public, we have to have clear ideas to modify our automotive policy in European Commission and European institution.
Yeah, it's not just trends in cars, though. That's the point. It is also trends in affordability and the way we use them and the way they're looked at. Lucien, let me come to you. You guys at T&E have been looking in. You guys sort of take the perspectives on what's happening. What are the hindering conditions? Why are, as was just outlined, why aren't people across the European Union buying vehicles that will lead us to carbon neutrality?
Well, good morning, everyone. So T&E, we're an NGO working on sustainable transport policies. So maybe I want to nuance a bit that question, if I may, and also what has been said before. What we see actually in Europe this year is that we're seeing record sales of electric cars. Despite what we hear sometimes in the media, the third quarter of the year 2025 was 17% electric car sales. So yes, that's a European average. There's a lot of different disparities between member states, but this is not just one or two member states. Actually, there's been 10 member states that have seen record-breaking electric car sales in the third quarter of this year. And there's France, 20%, Slovenia as well, 12%, countries like Belgium also breaking records. So this is a movement that is accelerating. And why do we see this acceleration this year? Actually, this is because there has been new targets, new European car CO2 targets kicking in. And this is also what explains that the year 2024, we have seen slower electric car sales because the car industry was preparing for a target the following year. So that explains the phenomenon you were describing in Slovenia, which was something we expected and predicted. Now, what's important is, you mentioned what are some of the hindering factors. So, of course, it could go faster, and there are still things that needs to be addressed. The automotive package from the European Commission next week will hopefully help. But what we see is mainly two things. So, one, the market could have been going faster if the EU had not weakened and delayed the 2025 target. We have seen, based on industry estimates and forecasts, that overall this leads to a lower of 2 million units of electric car sales over the next few years. This delay of the target the Commission has done earlier this year. The second important point, and I think this will link and connect to what François was saying, is the price of the vehicles. Today, what we are lacking is a large volume, large supply of affordable electric cars. Actually, I was looking at data for the price of vehicle before this panel. What we see is that in the past 6 years, the average price of a mass market electric car, so small and medium, the ones that the working classes are buying, has increased by 40%. This is a very big increase. Now, the good news is that the car industry is planning new models, affordable electric car models. There's the Renault 5, there will be more, there are more, about close to 20 new electric car models which are at or below 25,000 euros. Now, these are the models that we need to see more of, and this is where also we need to see policies like social leasing. This is an innovative policy that was deployed in France that is working very well, which will give a strong supply side and demand side signal to scale up these affordable electric cars that the market needs, because this is where the demand is, this is where the market needs to go in order to continue accelerating. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, also very interesting perspective on, and this is where the targets come in as well, these issues that are set out. Elena, I want to come to you. You guys at Post Europe, you are on the roads, sending vehicles all over, across many different countries. Talk us through the situation of how a business like yours looks at the current landscape, the policy landscape, when you're trying to decarbonize your fleet. How do you work out where to invest, what to put your money into?
Okay, thank you very much. Post Europe represents 53 postal operators in the whole Europe and the 27 postal operators in the European Union. We look at the mobility in taking into account the three impacts of mobility, that is CO2 emissions, air pollution and congestion, and I think it's very important to highlight that because there is people, health and economy there. And in order to tackle these challenges, we develop what we call a strategy based on sustainable mobility, smart mobility, and based also on people. And when we talk about sustainable mobility, we are relying, of course, especially or mainly in the last mile, in electric vehicles. We have more than 100,010 electric vehicles in the whole Europe. We also have more than 20,000 alternative vehicles, more than 100,000 e-bikes and bikes. And what is really zero emissions, we have 170,000 people delivery on food. And this is really zero emissions delivery. In addition to that, our cars, electric cars, are fueled by almost 80% of energy coming from renewable sources. That I think is also very, very important. So for us, we have more than 300,000 delivery points or access points, let's say, in the European Union. I think is key for us to have affordable electrical vehicles. But it's also true that for us is also very important to understand what is the value chain. In the last mile, the best solution probably is the e-bikes, the electric vehicles, but for the land haul, there is no solution. Electric vehicles, electric trucks are not ready. And if we consider the study by the European Parliament that it says that by 2030, the grid capacity should have improved or increased by 60%, I think we are falling behind. So we are calling to have a really balanced approach. Postal operators have been really boosting electrical vehicles, even in the last 20th century. In Correos, for example, we started to test some electric vehicles in 1980. So, but we need really a balanced approach, and also it's not a matter of the users or the companies, it's a matter of the technology, of the innovation, and the affordability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is it. Growing up, we used to have a milkman that would come with an electric vehicle to deliver our milk to the house. Beatrice, I want to come to you. We're talking about the different technologies, companies like Elena's that are on the road. What are you looking at about that spread, that policy spread, especially when the concern has been that perhaps the infrastructure, the grids are not prepared for the amount of electric vehicles that we want? Or is it still, as Magda sort of outlined, the priority just to chase at the BEVs?
Yes, I think there is no maybe simple reply to what you're asking, but I think we can look at from different angles and different actions that we can take simultaneously. okay, we are discussing that there's been a slower uptake of the battery electric vehicles than expected, but I think, let's say, one area that we still need to push is, at least, let's say, from the innovation perspective, is really the battery electric, value chain in Europe. Because batteries remain a strategic technology, not only for the clean mobility, but also, if you think also the integration with the energy system and our renewable energy power grid. This is really, I think a technology where we need to continue making efforts in innovation in Europe. Magda already mentioned that the Commission is working on a battery booster package that hopefully will come soon. And one point where I think we can, let's say, push the battery vehicles, battery electric vehicles in Europe is about manufacturing, is about also European content requirements, non-price criteria, circularity, but innovation also plays a key role there. Recently, IEA has also published a global car market outlook report, and let's say you can see there the cost gap between a battery electric vehicle produced in Europe and one, for example, produced in China. And it's not impossible, let's say, to cover still with the cost gap if we have, let's say, good manufacturing, if we work on other things like, of course, critical materials and other cost components. So innovation remains also part of the solutions there, and this is also, as I mentioned before, one of the key points of the strategy of the automotive industrial plan, for automotive action plan, for what concerns research innovation. But as I mentioned before, there are also other technologies we're looking at from the R&I perspective to decarbonize transport and road transport, and I want to mention, for example, briefly hydrogen. This has not been touched upon. So the hydrogen, I think, we are shifting the focus from light-duty vehicles. That was, a bit the hype until very recently. More, let's say, shifting towards the usage in heavy-duty vehicles and public transportation networks. So that is still where, also from the point of view of technologies, we are trying to push at European level. Although competition also with heavy-duty vehicles between hydrogen and batteries is increasing, because the cost of batteries are still, let's say, going very much down, and there are still also in hydrogen a lot of infrastructure challenges that need to be tackled. Last but not least, concerning hydrogen and shifting to e-fuels, there I think the prospects of R&I are very large, because e-fuels depend on hydrogen, among others, and there we need to really improve the cost, doing the scale-up, as Magda already said. And so, and last but not least, still also on sustainable fuels and advanced fuels. They are also, let's say, being looked on research innovation from the point of view of maximizing the impact across technology, but also across value chain. That is very important to mobilize the feedstock. The feedstock cost can be very challenging, and but still, let's say, I think it's still a technology where, I mean, very important also for the energy security concerns, if you want. So this is also a big driver for homegrown biofuels, and we need to look at it as well.
Thanks, Beatrice. Francois, I'll come to you. We've already heard there's this sort of big proposal everybody's expecting. It's this sort of end-of-year proposal. Is it going to be a Christmas present? What are we going to get out of it? For you, from a sort of transport committee perspective in the European Parliament, what's the priority for you? What are you doing, or what are you looking out for most within this?
So of course, we have a lot of priorities, and all modes are one priority. And I want to mention something, because we talked this morning about bio and e-fuels, and I hear this idea not only here, not only in this room, but everywhere, that we can use e and biofuel for automotive. It's not, and it's the answer for your question. It's not good to use some e and biofuel in the priority for particular cars, because we need e-fuel and biofuel for aviation, they don't have any solution in terms of propulsion. So we need to prioritize this kind of fuel for aviation, for shipping too, because we have a very important issue with the pollution of shipping. It's one of the a big part of the 30% contribution of transportation to a production of carbon. So it's one of the questions. Of course, in the committee, we have to make the transformation, the theoric production possibility of E and biofuel production, and to industrialize it. But I want to mention one point, because there is a lot of panel about E and biofuel here in Brussels. If we don't have the contribution of the oil companies, because they earn a lot of money with fossil fuel, and they have to pay the transformation of oil to the target of neutral carbon oil. If they don't pay, it's not only with the level of and the support of Commission. It's important to have it that we make this transformation. In 3 or 4 years, it exists factories in Europe to produce this oil, or it will be a big issue in the future. And at this time, we have to be focused to predict it. Of course, the member of the DG Move talk about the high-speed train in Europe, but at this time, there is no budget to finance high-speed train. And I will finish my speech with one thing, because you want some good things just before Christmas.
I really do.
The only budget is increasing so much is the budget of transportation. And one of the news is not so good news, because we mobilize a big part of this budget with a double in the future MFF to military mobility. With not a good news, but inside the bad news there is a good news, because especially in the train transportation system, if you mobilize funding for military ways, it's a good news for civil transportation, with the main use of train transportation with 95–97% transportation, and the train mobilization in our budget, even it's for the military issue, is a very good thing for decarbonization. Right. We have to support train, even night train, because I see a lot of people in this room who are very young people. They prefer to take night train than plane. And for to be successful in decarbonization, I just have to mention that we have to put some taxes to the airplane. Kerosene is not taxed as he produces carbon, yeah. So we have to support it too.
They will touch on that, I'm sure, in the later panels. Zala, I want to come to you. Talk to us from an Environment Committee perspective. What are you looking out for in this upcoming proposal, and what are the priorities for you going forward?
Well, I think it's important that we look at the big picture, because if we all have, every single one of us here has an EV, but the electricity comes from outside the EU where they burn coal, did we really did anything? I think, like, when we're talking about this, we need to take a step back and not just look at one file after the other, but look at how they all complement each other. Because the electricity needs of Europe are getting higher and higher every day. And not just because of the transport sector and because of the electrification of the transport sector. We have the AI, we have the data storage. That's a huge consumption of electricity. And right now, we don't produce enough clean electricity. And we're not gonna produce it by 2050 if we wanna be carbon neutral. So we're gonna have to rely, if we don't do something about it, on the countries outside the EU, because the world is not an isolated place. I think sometimes in the EU, we forget that. It's easy for companies, it's easy for people to move from the EU. So I think that's what we have to have in mind. The other thing that I really want to see from this package is tech neutrality. We keep hearing about it, it became kind of like a buzzword in Brussels. Everyone's talking about tech neutrality, but I think it has to become a reality. And technological neutrality shouldn't be a flexibility. It should be a standard in the European Union. I think this is the basis of our competitiveness. And I, as a politician, or we as politicians here, we shouldn't be telling which technology is going to be the primary technology after 2035 or after 2040 or 2050. We set the guidelines. We said we want to have a clean environment. We want to have tech neutrality. But now how we get there, it shouldn't be up to us. It should be to the market. It should be to the innovators. It should be to the companies. But the job of the politician, in my opinion, is that we create the enabling conditions for the companies to get there, for the innovators to get there. That, you know, becoming an innovator and succeeding doesn't mean leaving the EU and moving to China or the US. I think this should be our priorities. So just to sum it up, like, look at the big picture, how it all complements each other, what this electrification means in transport everywhere, where the electricity is gonna come from, and for the politician to understand that we should create enabling conditions, we should create good atmosphere for the economy, for the industry, and not telling them exactly what to do.
That's where it gets complicated, though, because the market follows trends and follows where the regulation pushes. If you look at Norway, where they have managed 100% of their new cars are electric vehicles, it's because of the regulatory...
But it's also oil.
Yeah,
like Norway, like one of the biggest exports is oil, so it's fossil fuels. So this is why I don't like the example of Norway, because it's a very different situation.
It's a complicated.
Than the EU.
This is exactly it. It's a complex outlook of how to do it, and it gets even more complex when we look across the whole of the EU. Elena, I want to come to you. Talk to us about a little bit. Firstly, about your sort of concrete policy demands. When you come to Brussels, what are you saying to people in the Commission, in the Parliament, in the Council? What do you hope? And also, perhaps you can talk a little bit about the practical realities for reducing emissions from your fleet. What are the priorities there?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I totally agree with you, and it's one of the issues that we raise when we go to the policy options. We consider that, as I said, we are fully committed from many years already, but we need flexibility, and we consider that one size does not fit all, and that electric vehicles are not the only and the best solution for all the businesses. So I think we have to be flexible and balanced, and is what we are really claiming for. We think that it will be a mistake to really set targets for purchasing e-vehicles in the industry, because we consider that it will not help to decrease the prices. Companies will not have any impulse to do that. I think it will also impact on innovation, because they will know that everybody will have to buy their cars, so there is not an incentive for that. And then still is, as I said, is very expensive. And then if we talk to lane haul, we own the last mile delivery fleet, but we don't own the lane haul. And for that, we rely on SMEs. And SMEs has not the power to invest on electric vehicles that are not ready now. So that's why we are really claiming for a balanced approach and not setting targets for purchasing vehicles of certain technology, let's say. And then what we are doing in order to decrease our carbon footprint, in addition to invest in alternative technologies, we are also relying on EI in order to optimize routes. We are also training our teams. I think is key. And also, we are also relying on, for example, the PUDOs, the lockers. I think is a good solution, but it's still, people in the European Union still prefers to the item to deliver at home by 60–70%. So it's not the only solution and the best solution. I think we need a balanced approach. And then we also have to take into account that if someone goes to pick up the parcel in a Pudo by car, the CO2 emissions increase by 15% more or less.
If they go to a locker where the
Exactly.
package
By
is being
car?
delivered to, yeah, okay.
Exactly. So there is no, again, there is no one size fits all. Thank you.
If you had, this is a slightly strange question, if you had like unlimited budget as a business, where would you invest most strongly? What would your priorities be? You would go for the electric vehicles because of the policy demand, or would you still look at a more neutralized, different base of technologies?
Yeah, no, I think we will, again, we need a balanced approach. I think currently electric vehicles for trucks is not, we don't have the grid, we don't have the infrastructure, so we wouldn't invest only in electric. I think we need a mix that allows us to really comply with the regulation, but also comply with the quality that our clients demand.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Lucien, coming to you, talk to us a little bit about this discussion we've been having from what you've been researching and looking into, this idea of neutrality. Where's the best place to invest? Where's the best place to put the money? And also what your sort of policy demands on the guys on this side of the panel would be. What do you ask from them when you're speaking to them?
So indeed, we see a lot of talks about technology neutrality. A lot of stakeholders are pushing for it. So basically, it's to promote the sales of combustion engines after 2035. Under, it can be biofuels, it can be hybrids. There's different forms in which this technology neutrality concept can be translated, but basically it means combustion engines after 2035. So maybe what I just want to highlight here are 3 reasons why this technology neutrality approach is not a bad idea, is not a good idea. So number 1, the targets that we have currently for electrification, they are the compass for investments. We see that there's hundreds of billions of euros that are invested in the whole value chain for electric vehicles. That is charging, battery, EV components. So all of these things, they depend on the certainty that are placed on the market and on business players thanks to the targets. There's been a declaration and a coalition of 200 more than 200 CEOs that have sent a letter to Ursula von der Leyen saying exactly this. Please keep the targets because our businesses and our certainty depend on them. Now, the second reason why the technology neutrality is not a good idea is that technology neutrality goes against affordability. So it's important to understand that electric cars, they're today the cheapest to run, and they're quickly becoming also the cheapest to buy. So what we have behind the slogan of technology neutrality on the other side are, for example, plug-in hybrids. Plug-in hybrids cost on average 55,000 euros. This is much more than electric cars, which are 40,000 today. We also see e-fuels. E-fuels, it's about 6 to 8 euros per liter. Now, we see in France, Gilets jaunes for much less than that. Same for advanced biofuels. They are in extremely limited supply. That means that their price would be also much more expensive. And now the third reason is that the world is actually going electric, and this is happening with or without Europe. The race to the global race for electric cars is on. China is racing, and a lot of the global markets are actually surpassing Europe, like Thailand, like Vietnam. So these countries are booming, and like I was saying earlier, even at home in Europe, we're also seeing record-breaking electric car sales. So I hope this can highlight the importance of staying firm on the targets, staying away from biofuels. What was mentioned earlier by François on biofuels is extremely important. The supply of advanced biofuels, we're talking about used cooking oil, animal fats, it's extremely limited. It's only sufficient to meet about half of the demand for aviation and shipping. So it would be absurd to create more demand in cars for these fuels, for cars running on animal fats, when there is not enough for aviation and shipping. So yeah, that's our call to the co-legislators and to the Commission. Let's see next week what comes out. But we hope that it sends a strong signal towards electrification.
Francois, you
of course.
Just quickly respond to it.
Very quick, because it can open the real debate now. Because when you hear somebody who is supporting technology neutrality, he said, in fact, I'm against the full electrification model. And the solution for automotive is a full electrification model. And not to say it's a little bit hypocrite, I'm supporting technology neutrality at this time, because if you are for neutrality, technology neutrality, in fact, you are for the fossil oil. That's the true response. But I'm open because, of course, we have to consider the situation of industry. We are open for vans because every corporation, every brand, it's impossible to sell some vans because of infrastructure, because of the price at this time. So we are open for adaptation, because the electric vans, it's only 9% sales in Europe. So it's impossible for Volkswagen, Renault, and so to sell it. So we are open for 3 or 4 years. And second point, you want be very short. I don't believe in the full electrification of trucks. And I don't know why the commissioner, why the MEPs believe that we can have full electrified trucks. It's not the truth, because you need so much electricity to have the autonomy for big trucks. It's impossible to do it. So we have to be open for hydrogen, open for E and biofuel for trucks, because it's a false idea that we can converse all the trucks, electric trucks at this time. Of course, there is some demonstrators, but it's not a solution for trucks. So I open my way of thinking, but I'm sure she renounced to electricity neutrality, even if she's a member of EPP.
And well, I know we don't have much time. I very much disagree with Lucien, so I'm just going to say that China has no penalties, no bans, but it has a greater uptake of EVs than the EU. So without all of this regulation, bans, penalties, and so on, they are performing better than us when it comes to EVs. So I think when we look at this, I think that the answer is clear. The tech neutrality is the way forward, and we need enabling conditions. We need to support our innovators. We need to support our companies and not limit them the way we currently are.
Yeah, I mean, even on this panel, we're seeing the complexity of the discussion. Research saying one thing, industry saying another, politicians. There's a sweet spot here where the floodgates open and we reach climate neutrality, and that's the point, and that's sort of the point in trying to find this discussion. Talk to me a little bit about the role for technology advancement in all of this, in the transition, Beatrice. Where do we land on this? What's the vision from the Commission?
Yes, as I said before, we still see, let's say, important role for innovation and technology development across several technologies. I mentioned batteries, where we, let's say, also support R&I very much also upstream, so upstream on the value chain, so new chemistries, new materials that could, really diminish the dependence that we have on critical raw materials and critical also suppliers outside Europe. So this is, for example, one aspect. I think I like also to recall what Zara was saying about, transport should not be seen independently of, for example, of the overall energy system. So we have to look really at a holistic approach. So also when it comes to electrification, we have to look at really, across the several sectors. Another important aspect concerns, for example, the electric charging stations that we know they face challenges across some member states, and also there, for example, There are R&I efforts that focus on the integration of mobility solutions with the grid by making really, more user-friendly recharging infrastructure concepts and technologies that include vehicle and grid integration. So also that, working on synergies with the vehicle system integration, with the energy storage system, and having really, a very modern and connected grid for large-scale vehicle-to-grid deployment. This is, for example, also something that we are looking in Horizon Europe, and hopefully, let's say, all these projects that we finance will also feed into the review of AFIR that was mentioned earlier by Magda for the end of next year.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, there's a lot of policy and shifts, and you guys are working hard to make changes across the board. Listen, we've got like a minute left of this panel. So what I'm going to try and do is just read some of the questions, and if you have a one-sentence answer to it, then I'll let you know. So Matthias Schmidt said, can you explain the contradiction, slightly here what you were talking about, of de-risking from China, more localization, but driving into a technology with the supply chain dominated by China? Wouldn't it be wiser and a wiser and more convincing argument if we had those parts in place?
Sorry,
it's okay, you kind of mentioned it already. Yeah. It's a good question.
No, I meant this is also, for example, strengthening the manufacturing capacity in Europe. So this is also, for example, I was mentioning the case of batteries before. So this is, totally, for example, an area where we can, not immediately, but slowly, let's say, become maybe less dependent on China and work on made in Europe requirements also for critical technologies.
And here I think this is something we can all agree on, the Circular Economy Act. I think we have the problem with critical raw materials, and at least the ones that we already brought into the EU, they should stay in the EU, even though we're always going to need new virgin materials, but that it means we need to diversify, but also look at the full life cycle of the vehicles.
Yeah.
So just about, I have to leave in 2 minutes, just about China, it's a very important issue. We don't have to be naive. It's not only with competitiveness that we can protect our automotive industry. We have to protect with tariff. We need it because it's not fair competitiveness with China. They have the state support of their industry for 30% of the price. So if we continue to be naive with China, we will have a big issue, so we have to protect us.
Lucien and Elena, quick final word, yeah.
One sentence, local content. The Commission will launch the Industrial Accelerator Act next year, I understand in January. What we hope to see there are local content requirements to ensure that public procurement and public money only goes to made in EU electric cars, made in EU batteries. And this can really help give the signal and build the value chain for these strategic components in Europe.
Elena, a quick final word from you.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's, again, I think we need a balanced and pragmatic approach. I think the European Union currently is not ready to have an increase of grid by 60% in 4 years. We are committed to electrify and to becoming carbon neutral, but I think we need to be pragmatic. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all 5 of you. I think we could have done the whole conference on this one discussion. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. A big round of applause to all our panelists. Thank you so much. There were lots of wonderful questions as well on the Slido. Thank you so much. Sorry we didn't get to them. And I'm now going to hand over to Stefano Porciello, who's going to take us through the next panels. So please stay where you are. They'll head on immediately. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really like the panel. Thank you so much. Lovely, great talk.
Hello? Hello? All right. Hi. Do you want to have a seat? Welcome. So I can mention you one after the other. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. Okay, we are starting. Welcome. So it's good to see you all here. This is the Euractiv Transport Policy Conference panel on the future of aviation. We will discuss the pathways to achieve climate goals. So my name is Stefano Porcello. I'm a journalist with Euractiv. I cover energy, environment, and transport policy. Before I forget, you should see some QR codes on the screens. You can take a picture of that and send me your questions on Slido. I will receive it on this tablet and ask our panelists. For those online, you can also enter in Slido and type #policyconference, and you will be able to send your question through. So the aviation sector has a huge problem. Emissions are going up rather than down. In the previous mandate, the European Union set clear mandates for uptaking more sustainable fuels, sustainable aviation fuels. But the plan has a major problem, that sustainable aviation fuels are expensive and not here yet. So we need to completely change the way we produce aviation fuels, and we have to find new ways to produce from both biofuels and electronic fuels. These are made with hydrogen and CO2, and so we have also a second problem, which is the availability of hydrogen and CO2. So the Commission recently said that the investment need to reach the EU goals in 2035 range between 56 and 66 billion euros, and that the investment to reach the goals for 2050 is between 276 and 376 billions. The main question is, who pays? Does the EU need to step in and support companies in this huge transformation? And how can we speed up the decarbonization of aviation? Here with me today, we have, for the European Commission, Eddy Lijois, who is the head of unit for transport, head of unit for aviation policy at DG Move. Next to him, we have two lawmakers sitting in the European Parliament. First, Nicolas González-Casares, MIP, for the Socialists and Democrats, and a member of the ITRE committee, so Industry and Energy. And next to him, Jean-Christophe Oetjen, MIP, of the Renew Europe group. He sits in the TRAN committee. Last but not least, we welcome Tania Cardoso-Simoes, who serves as Aviation Transformation Director at Eurocontrol, the European organization for the safety of air navigation. So, to start, let me ask you a very general question. What is the most important issue to address to decarbonize aviation? In other words, what do you see as the top priority now for the decarbonization of aviation? I would like to start with you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As we already said, there are basically three avenues to decarbonize aviation. One, which is, I would say, a short-term solution that we're already implementing, which is the development of sustainable aviation fuels. Some fuels are already available, what we call the bio-SAF, and we are working also on making sure that we have, I would say, different type of SAF, including what you indicated, the synthetic fuels, which are not yet on the market. So that's definitely one avenue on which we are working and which is the focus of the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan that was proposed, presented by the Commission on the 5th of November. The two other avenues on which we are also working is the second pillar, I would say, is the technological pillar, the development of zero and low emission aircraft. which are not yet there, but we see a lot of startup in Europe, and we hope to see first aircraft, zero-emission aircraft, electric hybrid, towards 2030. And the third avenue on which we have to work is ATM, air traffic management, to optimize traffic flows to reduce the consumption of fuels. So that's basically the three avenues on which we are working now.
Thank you very much. Nicolas Gonzalez-Cazares, what is the top priority from your point of view?
First, we all agree that the aviation sector is one of the hardest to decarbonize, and I think this is a real challenge. But first for me is promoting the integrity and availability of truly sustainable fuels for aviation. This is key. We have to avoid any supply of fuels that are not real important when it comes to climate assurance. I remind one thing. We are seeing a lot of people making fries, potato fries, in other parts of the world, but without potatoes, and bringing this oil to the European Union as used oil. This is not sustainable. This is what I mean when I speak about integrity first. Second, we need to scale up the production of SAF in Europe, supporting also the early movers that we have in this sector. We have a lot of people working on that in this continent to produce SAF, and they made huge investments, so we need to keep supporting them. And I think that this sustainable transport investment plan that are coming from the Commission have good ideas on that. But of course, bioenergy, we should support bioenergy, but in this case only the advanced biofuels. I think there's no time to go again back on not sustainable biofuels. And third, very important, the limited amount of biofuels or e-fuels is not infinite. I mean, it's not unlimited. So we have to promote the decarbonization of this sector by ensuring that biofuels and e-fuels are dedicated to those sectors that really are hard to decarbonize, like maritime or aviation. So we have an alternative for cars, that is electrification. If we use biofuels and e-fuels in cars, we won't have resources to use these fuels in aviation or maritime. It's clear, you mentioned in the beginning, oh, we don't have hydrogen. If we don't have hydrogen, we are going to dedicate the hydrogen to cars. And what are we going to do with planes or with ships? This is the reality.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Oetjen, what's the top priority in your opinion?
So I think that we agree that that SAF is the key, but we have, as you just mentioned, different types of SAF, and I really think that finding the right tools to ramp up production so that SAF is available is the key question at the moment. For me, there is obviously de-risking, so I pretty much appreciate that Commission has put forward a double-sided auction system as a proposal, because where we want to go at the end is advanced biofuels and eSAF, obviously. But on the way there are things on the market that has to be used as well, because they can help to decarbonize. So I'm not against bio-SAF because it's already there and we can use it, but we need to, in a way, look at refuel aviation and how the mechanism is built up. You know, we have this step approach. And I think that we need to find a solution how to address this so that this can meet better the industrial reality of the ramp up of production. And I would like to say as well that the incentives that we have at hand, especially in ETS aviation with the SAF allowances, that those should be looked at in order to make the market uptake by airlines more interesting. I think that we have a good incentive mechanism to use it, but we need a long-term perspective as well for those who want to invest today in new facilities of eSAF production and so on. For the rest, I agree with Eddie, but if I have to pick the one thing, that's, okay, how to make this production ramp up sustainable on the long run.
Okay, just a small question about the allowances. So you would support an increase of the number of allowances?
Well, I invented the SAF allowances, so at the time we picked a number, which is 20 million, because we didn't know how much we need actually. So I think that the Commission should look at it, and I'm open in ETS aviation to address this and to broaden the use of SAF allowances, yes.
You want to give us a figure? Like the double, the triple?
No, because it would be looking in a crystal ball. I mean, at that time, when we discussed it, I mean, we made an educated guess, but for an amount, we need the competence of the Commission to look into the details and to elaborate a good proposal, right?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Tania Cardoso Simões, what is the point of view of Eurocontrol? What is the top priority to decarbonize aviation from your point of view?
Well, I will start maybe with the main challenge, and our outlook as of last year, in the end of the year, really shows that if we look at the base scenario, in 2050 we'll have around more 50% of flights. So we should really get back, because we're all pointing out to SAF, which I agree is maybe the most important focus for the moment, but we cannot only look at SAF. If we are aiming at more 50% of flights and decarbonization, we want and we need to decarbonize. This is like, you know, going on a diet and asking double dessert. It's really difficult to manage this, and of course with Christmas coming it's even more difficult, but with the aviation challenges we need to tackle it not only with SAF, but with a basket of measures. And this is really I would say, the priority is never forget that we really need to focus on a lot of solutions. We have long-term, we have short-term. We were talking basically about the short-term, and indeed SAF is a main contributor, but we cannot forget ATM innovation and operations. Because even if it is a smaller percentage of the basket of measures that we need, around 10%, it can make a difference in the short term, even shorter than the amount of SAF that we need for the short term. And if we look at the long run, then we really need to look at other technologies, not only the replacement of fleets, but hydrogen, electric, hybrid, all that for the long term, otherwise we won't get there. And for aviation, and again for SAF, and it's really important that we don't forget that short hauls and long haul flights, they need different solutions. So basket of measures, and not only SAF.
Thank you very much. Eddie Lijoa, I have a question on double-sided auctions, but since you mentioned hydrogen and electric planes, do you think that the European Union will need to propose some sort of new regulation, some sort of new instrument to boost the production of these kind of aircrafts in the EU, or we are fine with the rules we have and then it's up to the market to build them?
Then, okay, on the technological side, then the EU has already supported so far the technological development, not only zero and low emission aircraft, but also conventional aircraft to, let's say, optimize technology. This was part of the Horizon program. We have two programs, Clean Aviation and for ATM, we have the program Cesar. So the Commission has made new proposal, I would say with 5 or 6 framework, I would say regulation that we will now need to develop and see what we will put inside. But for us, for DG Move, it's very important that there will be, let's say, continuity for the support of these technologies through the next MFF. Perhaps the difference.
The main question is: do this technology need a boost, or we have already everything in place for them to be developed here?
Oh no, they definitely need a boost, and what is very important is that we ensure that there is a boost, as we call it, up to the valorization of the technology. So to make sure that we can I would say, help these technologies to arrive on the market so that at some point in time there will be new aircraft on the market. That's perhaps a little bit a mistake in some programs in the past, is that we stop the support too early in the process, and then some technologies, some project cannot cross what we call the valley of death, and that we have to make sure that we support the whole chain up to, as I said, valorization of the new technology.
Okay, thank you. On the double-sided auctions, I think that was the most interesting development of the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan. So can you explain to us how do you intend to concretize this idea in the next months?
Yeah, as we have explained in the STIP, in the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan, we would like to go in 2 steps. And the first step would be to support member states putting money together with an existing mechanism, so which could kick in really very quickly already in 2026. So the idea would be to have this intermediary launching a kind of tender, asking to potential producers how much they could produce by a certain time, and I would say for a certain price. And then on the other side, the same intermediary will launch a tender for off-taker to see which off-taker would be ready to purchase synthetic fuels. I insist on that it would be for e-fuels, so would be ready, I would say, to enter in off-take agreement for a certain price. So there will be clearly a difference between the two, because we expect that synthetic fuels will be quite expensive, and then the idea is that this intermediary with public funding will close the gap between the two.
Just one last follow-up on this topic. So if the money, at least at the beginning, comes from the member states, then does this mean that the project will be national projects? That they will finance only projects in the participating member state, or all through the EU?
That's what we have to see, how we will implement that. There are already some member states who are ready to go, so to put money on the table to support first the double-sided auction. And at the last Transport Council last week, 8 ministers let's engage to support double-sided auction with public national money first. That's the first stage. The second stage, as we have explained in the STIP, will be to have an EU mechanism with EU funds through the future financial perspective. But with the first step, we will already learn by experience how to prepare this double-sided auction, so that we will be well prepared when it will come to put in place an EU mechanism with EU funds.
Thanks a lot. Nicolas Gonzalez Cazares. So, first of all, do you support this idea of double-sided auctions? Do you have any recommendation for the Commission on how to design them? And on the other side, why does industry need public money to do something that at the end of the day, the EU legislation is already obliging it to do?
First, regarding the proposal for double auctions at the EU level, I think it could be a promising measure, but you have to explain very well, because it's not the same European money that national money, because in the end could be a state aid, and the state aid has also its rules. So it's important to be clear on that, because yes, we know that there are different levels of state aid regarding the member states, and what we need is an European supply, but diversify also in a territorial manner. I mean, we need producers in almost all member states, and regional and local producers will be very important. If we have 1 or 2 big producers of SAF in Europe, probably will be a mess. So we have to find the right balance on that. So, and I think it's clear, this goal on the refuel aviation, how to provide supply to all the big airports in Europe, means also how to diversify this sector in a regional level. Second, this idea, what the industry needs, probably the industry is better prepared than me to answer this thing, but for sure, we have seen there are people that need SAF, that need to decarbonize. But the problem is always the same, pricing, the signal of pricing. Now, SAF is expensive. SAF, it doesn't exist by the moment, so we have to encourage the industry, but also to support them. But we cannot forget taxes and subsidies. We have fossil subsidies for aviation in this moment. So the best way to help to decarbonize could be a change in the way we subsidize fossil fuels in aviation. So we need a ramp up of taxes in aviation and decrease taxes for SAF.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Ogen, the same question for you. Also, you come from a liberal party, so if I remember correctly, what I studied at university, you should not be very much in favor of state intervention, right, into the economy. So why, in this case, you support the double-sided auctions and the European intervention in the production of SAFs?
Well, first, you're right. I'm not a fan of state intervention if a market functions well, but I'm a market guy. And what I want to see as well is that there are new emerging producers that can kickstart their production, right? I mean, we are in a situation where we have those big oil companies, which are the incumbents in the market, but we see new emerging players, and I would like to see them flourish because they can bring competition to the market, which at the end is a very good step. So there's this price issue. That's why we have the SAF allowances, but we have as well this mismatch between long-term needs of those who want to invest and the short-term needs of aviation industry that decide only on short-term contracts for provision of fuel. So the double-sided auction system can bridge this, and if we can bring European money, member state money into a European system, and I pretty much rely on Eddie that he says, okay, let's see how this will work. But we have indeed member states. My own is pretty much engaged. So Germany, I know that the Netherlands, they are interested in it. They have a lot of projects in Rotterdam, right? So they are looking at it. And for me, that's why it's we have this not functioning market at the moment. That's why I think helping to kickstart it is the right approach. And we have already with H2 Global have some experience with double-sided auction systems. So I think if this is well designed, this can help us indeed to start or to give the needed investment certainty, especially for SAF producers, for them to do the final investment decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Tania Cardoso-Simoes, what Eurocontrol is doing to prepare this major transformation of the aviation industry? Because we are talking about new fuel standards, we are talking about new types of aircrafts. So what should we know, what should the European Commission know when it comes to preparing the ground for these new technologies to be used in European skies?
Eurocontrol, being an international organization, a technical, neutral organization, is really providing support to its member states and the European Commission, so we work a lot together. And basically I would maybe highlight 3 areas where we are really supporting. One of them is intelligence. We need data to take good decisions. So Eurocontrol is not a policymaker, but is supporting the policymakers with the good data, and both on aviation, so flights, numbers, capacity, but also on sustainability. And we're working together with the European Commission not only on the CO2 effects, but now and more recently on the non-CO2 effects, providing a new platform for the monitoring and the verification on the non-CO2 effects, and specifically a lot of work on contrails. On CO2, we also work with our member states to help them report and validate their reportings. But also we have a platform which is called Flying Green, And that really leads us to the conclusion that you are taking now. The member states can use all the 4 modules to see in their country what kind of investments they can do to ramp up SAF, for instance, or the needs to provide energy for the ramp up of the non-CO2 goals achievement. So that is really what we are providing: tools, intelligence, and last but not least, I have to say this, innovation. We're going from Bretigny to Saclay really to boost a lot of innovation. We put up to 500 million in-kind effort innovation in Cesar, basically. So really aligned with the master plan to provide the best outcome in terms of the decarbonization.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, please.
Purpose, if I may, because your question was, why should the public authorities provide funding for airlines? First, we have to make sure that we do not, I would say, decarbonize against the industry. So we should definitely make sure that industry is on board and we have a strong EU industry. And the second point is that perhaps to take the very example of the SAF alliance, what is the origin of the SAF alliance? That ETS revenue. So in fact, airlines, aviation is paying for the emissions, and from 2026, airlines will no longer get a free allowance, so they will pay for the emissions. So in fact, what we are pushing, and it's a very strong point for us in DG Move, is to make sure that when airlines are paying for the emissions, then at least part of the revenues should go back to the sectors to help decarbonization. So we should have a kind of virtuous circle about, I would say, funding of the policy.
Thanks. Just one thing: the money doesn't only go to airline, doesn't only support the decarbonization of airlines, but also of the production of petrol companies, right?
Then we should make sure, indeed, that we have a market which is as transparent as it can be. This is the case for jet fuel, because there you have Argus price, so there is, I would say, transparency on, I would call, a fair price. It is true that it is not, I would say, yet the case for SAF, because there is no, I would say, reference price, so the airlines are basically, they have to pay what we call a SAF premium. So that's something on which we are working, and it's indeed in the benefit of all stakeholders, including the fuel supplier, to make sure that there is the necessary transparency and that the airlines pay for what I would say they get, if I may say so.
Thanks a lot. Sorry I interrupt you, but I have a lot of questions, and a couple directly to you. So the Commission hinted at the possible setup of a book and claim system for trading clean fuel certificates. If I understand it well, if sustainable aviation fuels are not available in a given airport, there is the possibility to book and claim the use of these fuels even if they are not actually burning it while flying, right? But is this like the certification that the actual mandates that the European Commission and the European Union in general set up in the last mandate are not achievable without this book and claim system?
Apparently, the airlines are dreaming from a book and claim mechanism. We have issued a report in March where we consider that I would say we do not see the direct added value for that, also having in mind that the refuel, so the legal basis, provide that there should be SAF in basically all EU airports in 2035. Okay, there is still a little bit time before the deadline, but that's really the objective. Still, we see a lot of requests from the sector to have such a mechanism in place. And again, referring to what we have put in the STIP, we have indicated that indeed we recognize that SAF will not be available at all EU airports at, let's say, very short notice, in particular for synthetic fuels, which will be available in the first place in very low volume, and also the fact that SAF will not arrive in, let's say, smaller airport, regional airport, very quickly. So
the idea now is a limited mechanism or like a long-term one? It's too early?
You know, in life, everything is limited. We are also limited in time. So we will see what we will... but first, we are now examining let's say, the conditions to put such a mechanism in place. And the first condition is to have a very, very strong traceability of the fuels to make sure that there is only one certificate which will be issued for one batch of SAF.
Thanks a lot. I saw that you wanted to react.
Yeah, because it's really annoying, to be very honest, that the Commission is in this way reluctant in picking up this topic. We discussed this already when we discussed refuel aviation, and obviously when Parliament was talking about the mandates and putting in place refuel aviation, we were not able to design ourselves a book and claim mechanism, right? We need the services of Commission for this. But that's why we have inserted in refuel aviation the obligation for Commission to look into it and to prepare it. And they didn't do anything. And really, I'm really annoyed about this, because I think that book and claim would be the perfect mechanism in order to kickstart and in order to help the industry to really get the first movers on the track. And that's why I cannot understand why now Commission is saying, yeah, we look into it and then we will have a study and we will have it at the end of 27. We might then have more knowledge about if this is a useful tool or not. Sorry, guys. We need, in a way, a system. And what the Commission is always saying, it's too complicated and it's not sound from a regulatory perspective. But we have the tools at hand today. I mean, we're working with mass balance in ETS. We could use this. We have Bosch developed a fuel twin where you can look at, okay, where is the fuel tanked, where is it used? You can follow the fuel today digitally. There are all tools at hand, but Commission is still not wanting to go ahead with this. And this is really one of the key things where I think that the lack of this regulatory proposal from Commission is hampering the market to take off. So please, Eddie, give you do a little move, as you are in DG Move, and work on this this proposal, because this is really one of the key points that we need in order to get the industry started.
Yeah, Nicolas Casares, maybe you want to add something and then the right to reply.
Not always, but sometimes we have to support the creativity from the Commission, and this is one of the cases. I mean, I didn't support the book and claim system during the refuel aviation negotiations because I've seen some problems. Sorry, Dan, it's my
you can have a different opinion. You're a different group. Right?
Of course. But we are both pro-Europeans. But in any case, and we believe in decarbonization, and we also want SAF production across Europe, not in some places. And one of the main goals of the sustainable aviation fuels. So
sorry, what was the problem that you saw in the book and claim system?
The book and claim system first is traceability and transparency. That is first. That is the main problem, the environmental dimension. I think that is an open field to greenwashing, and it's very difficult to create systems that really check the integrity of the solution. And secondly, for me, the problem is that we need sustainable aviation fuels in all the airports in Europe. And to do that, we need producers across Europe. With this book and claim system, probably we will find some producers in some member states, not in different member states, and not availability of SAF in some airports. And this is the reality. So this is my fear about the book and claim system. But if you have a magic solution, for sure I will study and I will support it.
No, but the point is, when you don't have a book and claim system, you persist in this situation that there are the big oil companies, and you need to go for a 0.5 ESAF subquota. You need to go via the blend, and you cannot help companies that are producing it as first movers in one in one country at one spot to help them develop their business. That's the big point, and I really think that that we're falling short of a good answer on this problem that we have, and just saying, oh, it's too complicated, is for me not a sufficient reason of not exploring it and not doing it.
Maybe that could be true, but this how to avoid the greenwashing. in reality? How to avoid it?
But this is the
How
fact
to avoid
for
it?
this is the question for all alternative fuels that go on the market, right?
But you know, for example, in transport and mobility and land mobility, we are having problems of integrity and greenwashing when the use of some of the fuels. How to avoid this in aviation if you have this book and pay system could be very difficult. But if you find a solution, we will.
Yeah, I would like to hear what the Commission has to say.
I will reconcile these two persons, and I reconcile myself with Mr. Etienne. So, just to confirm that it is said that in the STIP, there was the report in March which concluded that we should not have a book and claim. Okay, fine. We have heard a little bit the different voices, and including your voice. And I can reassure you that we are looking with EASA how this mechanism could be implemented. And we will also, because to address your concerns, which is a fair concerns, to ensure that there is no greenwashing, no fraud, if I may say, to have, I would say, a traceability mechanism which will go up to the airlines, which is necessary to make sure that we have a closed system, making sure that in particular that there is not the same batch which is used, for example, under ETS.
There is a question from the audience for you, Tania Cardoso Simoes. The question is, should we establish a prioritization hierarchy for biofuels, phasing them out sorry, it's a little bit complicated, a prioritization hierarchy for biofuels, reserving limited biofuel stock for harder to abate sectors such as SAF and heavy-duty vehicles? So the question is about, do you think that biofuels should be prioritized for aviation and heavy-duty vehicles, or do you work on this topic?
No, basically, in terms of, again, policy making and final decisions, we are not, because we are neutral and technical. But of course, we provide information for that. And we all know the shortages that will come and the cost of opportunity that will come from those prioritization. We agree that for aviation, the most sources that we can find, including biofuels, is important. That's as long and as far as I can go. When we talk about prioritization, meaning that you have a cost of opportunity in other areas, including feeding, etc., and that is for the policymakers to decide. So I won't touch upon the prioritization.
And on the book and
issue.
claim system, do you think that there is a way to?
The book and claim is really a political.
Yeah, but technically speaking, can we be sure?
Technically speaking, we need the information to make sure that we have all the traceability up to the airlines, and on that part, we'll support all the positions that were here, providing good information to make sure that the mechanisms are clear. That's where we are.
All right, thanks a lot. There is another topic that we didn't touch upon, which in my opinion is particularly interesting. So European airlines that that cover long-haul flights have flagged that there is a problem with the Sustainable Aviation Fuels mandate, because they say, if we are obliged to uptake sustainable aviation fuels in Europe, then our competitors worldwide that stop in a non-European hub and then connected to the same faraway airport somewhere else in the world, then they have an advantage over us. And they called for a kind of carbon border adjustment mechanism for biofuels. Is the European Commission looking also into this? And do you have, can we expect something concrete to fix the problem?
I would say, first, before coming to what you mentioned is a corrective mechanism. What we are pleading in DG Move is to make sure that we can, let's say, export our rules worldwide, and in particular to make sure that we push, I would say, states outside Europe to apply CORSIA, even if the cost of carbon under CORSIA is much less than ETS, still we are pushing for that. And that's very important, that we do not see aviation in isolation from the rest of the world. It's a worldwide industry, and we have to make sure that we have fair competition. And fair competition, first of all, starts by making sure that we support the implementation and the application of CORSIA through the world. Then, that being said, it is a fact that there might be what we call carbon leakage, or let's say a lack of competitiveness of EU airlines because they have higher cost, environmental cost compared to third country airlines. And we have launched more or less 1 year ago a study that we call CBAM, but it's I would say in the context of the CBAM mechanism. First of all, to identify whether the environmental legislation, in particular refuel, implies a higher cost for EU airlines and thereby a lack of competitiveness compared to non-EU airlines. And then if it is the case, then we would have to see if we could put in place a mechanism which is, I would say, technically feasible, not, I would say, creating a huge administrative burden to correct this lack of competitiveness. So the study is still ongoing. So let's say we expect to have the outcome towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, and then we have still to
end of 2025.
End of 25, beginning of 2026. Then to see what we will do out of it. A study is only a study. So it's not a political decision to do something.
Our time is de facto up, but just very, very quick. Are you in favor or against a sort of carbon border adjustment mechanism for aviation?
Let me say first that I'm in favor of carbon border adjustment, and let's put in place this first, because we have a lot of problems and it's complicated, and there are some sectors that are already covered. First go for these sectors and then study the rest.
And Mr. Ochen?
So first we have to recognize there is a problem, and we need to address this distortion of competition. So I'm interested in seeing what Commission will propose, because it's difficult to address and difficult to find a solution from my understanding. But I wanted to say, because as we're running out, and maybe I really think that one of the key points that we need to look at as well is in the next MFF that under the Horizon programs there will be sufficient funding for research in aviation. We did a good job with Cesar in clean aviation, but now it's about implementing them, deployment, and we need in the next generation as well sufficient support for those. Because at the beginning you say we need a basket, and I pretty much agree with this, but we need to take action as well in order to secure this funding for the next MFF.
Thanks a lot. Just one last question, very, very quick reaction from all of you, starting from you. What is, in your opinion, the biggest risk for the success of EU aviation decarbonization?
I would say fragmentation and not duly cooperation, and I think this is connected with what you just said, and I fully support. We really need the continuation of Cesar, focus on deployment, but working together, because that's a way to follow one single master plan and not just starting to innovate or not innovate in a completely fragmented way that will not lead us anywhere.
Thanks. Mr. Ochen?
I agree, and I would say stick to the targets in refuel aviation, make them more flexible to reach. I told you about this step approach that we have at the moment, but there's really a risk that we discuss about short-term solutions and we lose out of sight the long-term things. So fragmentation is really the biggest risk.
Mr. Casares?
I almost agree 100% with both, but I think that the main problem nowadays is the limited capacity, the limited amount of feedstocks to produce SAF. And the main problem nowadays is changing the cars regulation. If we change the cars regulation, there will be a huge appetite for these fuels that are going to be dedicated for maritime aviation coming to light transport, and will be a mess, because in light transport we have a solution that is electrification. For me, it's very clear.
Thank you very much. And the Commission point of view?
I would not speak about risk, but challenges. For us, what is the challenge is to make sure that we continue on decarbonization.
And so what's the biggest one?
Having really a strong EU industry, good airlines, I would say healthy airlines, strong aeronautical industry. That's really what we have to do under the next MFF in particular.
Thanks a lot. Let's have a big round of applause, and then we will reconvene in 15 minutes. Thanks a lot. Welcome back. Welcome back to the last panel of today's Euractiv Transport Policy Conference. I'm Stefano Porcello. I'm a journalist with Euractiv. I cover energy, transport, and climate news. We are here to discuss clean shipping and what is needed to accelerate the transition. First of all, on the screens you have the QR code to send your question through Slido. As I see someone is already doing, just point to them with your phone and send us your questions. I will read them and ask them to the panel. For those online, there is another option, which is connecting into Slido and type #policyconference, and we will get your questions as well. So let me welcome here on stage our three panelists. On my left, Annika Krohn. She's the head of Maritime Transport and Logistics Unit in the Directorate General for Mobility and Transport at the European Commission. Welcome. So her unit is responsible for sustainable maritime policies, maritime markets, and international maritime agreements, as well as digital and sustainable intermodal freight, transport, and logistics. A lot to do, I'd say. Next to her, we have Jeannette Palgeux, who is an MIP from the Dutch Liberal Party, VVD. She's a member of the Renew Europe group. She's full member of the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee of the European Parliament and a substitute member of the Environment and Transport Committees.
Correct.
Last but not least, we have Anaïs Rios, who is a senior shipping policy officer at the NGO Seas at Risk. She works on maritime decarbonization with a special focus on wind propulsion technology. So in the last month, the European Commission put forward this sustainable transport investment plan and reminded us that the maritime sector emissions are about 13% of the total EU transport emissions, and that this is a very hard to abate sector because electrification is not an option for most kind of ships, maybe not all of them, but a big part of them, and choosing cleaner fuel choosing cleaner fuels made from biomass and hydrogen, or from biomass and hydrogen and CO2, has two huge problems. One is price, the other one is availability. I don't want to anticipate too much about what we will discuss during the panel, so let's start with a very simple question for all of you, just a couple of minutes. What is at stake when we talk about the decarbonization of the shipping sector, and what is the main challenge you see ahead? Annika, you can start. Thanks.
Thank you, Stefano, and good morning to everybody. Nice to see you here. So, EU legislation to decarbonize shipping is in place since 2023, and it includes ETS maritime, fuel EU maritime, which is fuel standard, and also alternative fuels infrastructure to take care of the supply of sustainable fuels. And what is at stake with this legislation, which actually initiated major transition in maritime shipping? First, as you mentioned already, is the credibility of Europe in meeting its climate goals. It's 13%. And unless we change the fuels used to their shipping sector, where emissions are increasing, will go against achieving the 2030, 2040, 2050 targets. Secondly, what is at stake? It's billions of investments, because this is not just a regulatory small tweak, it's a major transition. I think 5th transition in maritime history, starting from human to wind to steam to fuel. Now we go to 5th transition. And unless we stick to those goals, which at European level are very firm, we put into question the kind of viability of those investments done already by fuel suppliers, by operators, by ports. And third, it's not just about environment or energy transition in shipping. Pushing for supply of those fuels is about EU energy independence and security. So I think these are at stake, and we have to stay firm and make it happen.
Jeanette Ballieu, what is your point of view on this? What is at stake? What is the main challenge? And do you agree with what we have just heard?
Yeah, I think we agree on the challenges. I think if I would point it from my point of view, I've been vice mayor in the city of Rotterdam, worked a lot with the ports and the maritime cluster, and also as regional minister in South Holland. And I've seen the struggle that, of course, there are the international shipping. This is very important, but these are the bigger companies. But if we look at inland shipping, these are smaller, what we call in the Netherlands, Papa Mama family, family member owners. And so there are a few challenges. First of all, if you really want to get the goals, and I would like to achieve the goals, let's keep them. But always the question, how do we achieve that? So there is a part is finance. It's very important. This is start already with the STIP and the investments that are there. But of course, we need more money. And especially when you look at these small Papa Mama, one family ownerships companies. So this is one challenge that I see. The other challenge, very important, we see that in many other cases as well. If we want to become more sustainable, we need to really go for the chicken and egg question on supply and demand. So we see that there are opportunities for the supply, but investments are on hold because the demand is not there. And we see that there are some solutions like book and claim systems and ETS, better ETS regulations. We have to see what really works, because this is where we have to push for. But especially making sure that the demand is in a good way, so we can have the supply, which is one of the, I think, most important things, and not only in the shipping sector. And then, of course, level playing field. I mean, if you want to be more autonomous, but we also have to have level playing field within our union, but also with sectors outside.
Thank you very much. Anais Rios, what's your point of view? What is the challenge ahead, and what is at stake in this debate?
I would say, first I'd like to start with a simple idea, that is that wind propulsion is the first zero-emission propulsion that is available and scalable right now to the global fleet. And wind propulsion brings cuts in terms of fuel use, in terms of ETS liability for the operators, and also returns the investment for most operators between 3 to 7 years. So this is something to take into account when we talk about, for example, the fuel issue, which if we start implementing wind propulsion to the global fleet, then we will have a shrinking fuel problem, as we're going to be needing a little bit less more fuel. So I think we need to see this as a system understanding of the energy. It will help also to reduce increase our European, I forgot the word in English, I'm sorry, but our independence in terms of energy in the EU, okay. And so also our security. But so I guess also what I wanted to say is that I agree with both of the precedent speakers. It's an issue of credibility for the EU and making sure we do maintain what we've promised in terms of cut-off emissions, but it's also a clear issue of, well, availability, scalability of the e-fuel mainly, because yes, the other energy efficiency will not allow us to go the whole 100%, but they have a role to play.
Okay, thank you very much. Since she introduced this idea of wind propulsion technology, I saw a mention in the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan, but not much more than that. Is that like a technology that the European Commission is not really interested in, or why is that?
We are definitely interested in any technology that helps to first reduce fuel consumption, because the cleanest fuel is fuel not used, and wind accounts for that. And any other technology that, let's say, on the energy life cycle basis will reduce emissions or even carbon capture, which is another way to reduce CO2 and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So we are interested on everything. Concretely about wind propulsion, FuelEU Maritime already acknowledges contribution of this technology by we apply wind adjustment factor, which just based on installed capacity or power of wind on a ship, because new technologies always take time to settle in terms how we measure them, and in particular for wind propulsion it's very difficult to measure its actual contribution, but that's why we have simplified method but work on the precise method. And EU taxonomy we are revising to also have it better reflected.
Okay, thanks a lot. Besides this particular aspect, more in general, like what are, in your opinion, still the missing pieces of EU legislation, EU mechanism to support ship decarbonization that are not yet there and probably we should set up?
Maybe I ask the other panelists.
Well, you don't want to answer?
Oh, I can answer that. For example, FuelEU Maritime has a long review clause with all possible technologies or aspects we should still look at. This includes actual measurement of wind power, also carbon capture, black carbon, possible zero emission or close to zero emission technologies. We now see that there is development around fuel cells which are not precisely reflected in the regulation. So we were ahead of the time with this regulation, but it has all flexibility to adjust and learn as things evolve on the ground.
Okay, thank you. Jeanette Balge, before, when you were doing your introductory statement, I heard the word flexibility, which is a word that we hear a lot in the Brussels debate right now, but the main question is, first, if you think that the European decarbonization target need flexibility also in the shipping sector, and the second question is, if we start debating flexibility, isn't the European Union giving a mixed signal to the industry that has to decarbonize now, right?
I pronounce it incorrectly then if you think that it's about the goals. I was saying about the fuels. So there should be flexibility in finding a way in which the ship is sailing on. Whether that's e-fuels or I've seen electric in Rotterdam, the ship of Heineken, all known, is going electric. I mean, this is just a ship that goes back and forth between the factory and the port. But other ships, we saw hydrogen. There's also the question of methanol. I mean, as introduced already, there's and in long shipping distances, the wind propulsion as a part of that. I mean, there's so many flexibility, and so we shouldn't pick one and say this should be the choice. I mean, that is the flexibility that I'm looking for in the system, that there is a possibility for each ship, for each traveling journey. It depends on what's the best propulsion or the best energy source that you use. If it comes to flexibility, I always speak about the end goals. We see, of course, a little debate in the parliament on, well, should you lose the goals? That's a debate, but there's no majority for that. So let's stick to the debates. Let's stick to the goals. Let's not discuss that. Where you see the flexibility, in the sense that you were suggesting, we've seen it with the climate goals. I mean, we have to find a realistic way to get to those end goals. And this is what we have to learn from previous legislation. Does it work? How is the implementation going? Where do we see new innovations? How can we put it quickly into a system and not wait for 10 years, because then we're already 10 years further. I mean, this is what I ask of flexibility. But together with the business, de-risking, make sure that we get the steps towards those end goals.
I asked a similar question to a colleague of yours more or less 1 hour ago, but why do you think is there a need for the EU and the state, let's say, to intervene in boosting the clean fuel sector? Also because on the one side, yes, we have the airline companies for aviation, the shipping companies for maritime, but on the other side, there are actually petrol companies that have a lot of money to put into the decarbonization of their operations. And so why is a European intervention needed?
Simply economics. I mean, the better solution at this moment are too expensive. So nobody will use them. It's in the end, it's pure economics. So you have to de-risk and make the difference of pricing. You have to make sure that you get somewhere on that side. The investments of bigger companies in the beginning of the value chains are not done if there's not a demand, and the demand will stop, will wait, because the price difference. So you have to really make sure that in the whole value chain you find a way, and that could be with the book and claim system. We have to work that through.
So you support the idea of a book and claim system?
I would support, but we have to really look into it, how it really works, and if it will work, and if we can work through that with the whole value chain.
Okay. And it's serious. Do you support a book and claim system for sustainable fuels? And on the other side, what's your assessment of the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan that the Commission put out last month? Like, what are the missing pieces in that legislation?
In terms of the book and claim system, I think we still need to see in practice, well, to have a little bit more details into it. Now, for the new industrial plan we have, I will say one thing is that we just have one line on wind propulsion. For the rest, in terms of the e-fuel, it seems to be going into the right direction. We know that the suppliers need to have an understanding of what is going to be, let's say, the next 5 years for them. That's at least that. And so what we have here, we help with this, and yes, reduce the risk, and that's what we need when we're talking about needing an investment 7 to 10 times more than a regular fuel. We need to de-risk this. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. For the European Commission, how is the idea of book and claim concretizing within the Parliament? Like, what are the discussions? What are you looking into? Is there any problem that appears at first sight that you will have to overcome? Is this a study that you should bring forward? What is the approach so far?
We got last year in 2024 and from Parliament a request for preparatory action on book and claim, which of course, with all procurement rules, it has taken us a while to prepare, but we are about to launch a study about use of book and claim, not just in shipping, but more broadly in the transport. But of course, like also Anna said, that we have to be careful. Any book and claim can function only if we have proper tracing system. So it doesn't function unless we are sure that no credits are claimed twice or there are credits which are false. So big part of the study will look at the tracing. IFI and Union database is one element only in Europe which secures the credibility of fuel supply. But in the study we look broader, also globally. We have identified the main shipping hubs where we go and see what are the status of registers, how the accounts are kept, and which systems we can connect to. But the idea, of course, is that if market needs to be facilitated to help suppliers to consolidate demand, to bring, let's say, distance. If supply is in one place and consumption in other place, it's no point to transport this fuel. It should be possible in digital.
Thank you. Regarding the missing pieces, we know that there is a European maritime industrial strategy and a port strategy that should come next year.
February.
February, perfect. So what should we expect concretely? What is at stake there? Is it about permitting? Is it about anything else?
Yeah, okay. Strategy by nature is not concrete, I think. Strategy is by nature comprehensive. It means that it has to bring together all bits and pieces which already exist, assess how they function together and what is still missing. And 3 strategies: STIP, Sustainable Transport Investment Plan, ports strategy, which has also big part on the energy and provision of the role of ports in the future energy transition and supply of fuels, and industrial strategy, which looks at what type of ships we are producing, how we can retrofit. Do we need dual use assets for the defense and resilience? It brings all those elements together. So if you want concrete, then I will list probably for next 10 minutes the concrete elements, but I would not go there.
I would be up for it. Just shifting to the more international dimension of this debate that we are having today, there has been a huge problem at the International Maritime Organization earlier this year, where the European Commission and the European Union went to push for taxing polluting fuels, and then our own allies, right? The US pushed back, and at the end of the day, there was no deal at all. Do you think that there is a chance to have a deal in the next round, or we have to wait for the next US elections instead?
To be precise, couldn't say that there was no deal. There was no vote for a deal, but indeed, it was a major kind of outreach of US to not to have this IMO net zero framework in place. On the EU side, we of course remain committed to find a global solution which is science-based and ambitious enough to bring countries along to have this global framework, because shipping is global and we can't achieve the same scale of emission reduction with the regional measures. Plus, of course, it's a big problem from the viewpoint of level playing field. Europe acting on its own will put our shipping companies and in particular our ports in disadvantage from the competitiveness perspective.
But so without an international deal, then we should slow down our own decarbonization?
We have our 2040, 2050 targets agreed.
Okay.
And I think the port strategy will also be an opportunity to reflect on that position, that it didn't work out with the IMO. There are, of course, other ways to make sure that we have a more international view. I mean, there are other ports in the world that also want to go for green shipping, are already asking and demanding green shipping. So I think the port strategy can also have a positive point of view on this perspective. I know there are green lanes, as we call them, between ports, that the one port and the other port. I know that from the Rotterdam area, that these longer lines, international lines, are sailing on green energy. So these are, I think it's not a possibility of returning back and just do nothing. I think we have to make a step forward, and I think the port strategy also is an opportunity for that.
And do you have like any concrete recommendation to make to the Commission?
Well, I just did one.
Something I would like to ask you, Anais is, well, first, if you have any reaction about what we've heard so far, and second, do you think that the European Union will be able or not to convince the rest of the world that decarbonization of shipping is a matter of survival? Let's say it's also an industrial opportunity. What is the problem there, and how do you think that the NGO communities should work to make it to have an impact at the international level?
Yeah, thank you. I would say, well, first, I want to be very clear that I don't think we're talking about the United States of shipping, so we have to understand it's a multilateral process, the IMO, even though I know I was in the room, how much unprecedented those pressure were, and quite shocking, frankly. Actually, I received comments from many delegations saying that they needed to have in the room EU presence that was much more constant and stable and sure of their negotiation lines. And so clearly there is room for the EU to play a stronger role at the IMO. Maybe that comes also with understanding that some countries bear a lot of economic and political constraints that are very real, and then maybe the EU can come with not just red lines at the IMO, but also an understanding of that. Maybe that comes with offers of cooperation or also economic policy, not just goodwill. So I think there is clearly, yes, a role to play, and also to be clear, it was the US, but it was also a lot of countries that had economic incentive to continue with a fossil fuel production. So it just, yes, coming prepared and ready with options and negotiation lines.
Thanks. For the Commission, is there an idea of creating like an international, let's say, coalition of willing partners that want to push forward the decarbonization of the international maritime sector, and go ahead without the US, without petrostates that are against this deal?
There has to be a positive vote at IMO to go ahead, and this positive vote has to be convincing enough so that it will not lead to meddling or the problem of implementation. So we really have to build a broad consensus to be successful at global level. So the future solution, we have to see what comes. It's very difficult to assess now. Has to be simple enough to give a clear signal, but nuanced enough to take into considerations those economic and political concerns of as many states as possible to have a broad basis.
Okay, thank you. So there is a question from our audience. I would say it's for Jeannette Bajeux. The question is, without obliging member states to invest maritime EU ETS earnings, so the CO2 what is earned from CO2 certificates, back into the shipping decarbonization, won't this slow down the innovation and marketization of alternative fuels? And can the Parliament correct that?
I do agree that a part of the ETS should at least go back to the sectors. But the problem is every sector is asking for that same question. And I don't, well, maybe not a problem, but I see that concern in every sector. And at least there should be something that goes back, because every sector needs the money. They need to invest in it. So it's not only for this sector, it's for more. So a general line would be good. I think there was a general line more or less from the Commission side that it should be going into in sustainability goals. Well, even my own government doesn't do that. It's a general money. And from there, of course, they're saying they put money into sustainability. But I can see the concerns of all sectors. And I think it's fair that we should bring that back to the sectors, because they also need help to make the change. And this is always what I'm saying. If you set goals which are different, we are asking the sectors to move faster than they might want to do in the first place. They're setting everybody is working on that. So if you're demanding something, you also have to give something to make sure that they can make that leap.
Okay, thanks. We talk a lot about competitiveness and ambitious EU policies driving investments in green technologies. There are two issues, in my opinion, on what's happening in the sustainable fuel sector. On the one side, we will need hydrogen to produce some kind of these new fuels. The problem is that we had 2030 targets, 10 million tons of production, 10 million tons of imports. The European Union created the hydrogen bank, put a lot of money, but we are still very much off track. How can the EU avoid making the same with sustainable fuels this time?
On all those energy policies and energy transition policies, we are learning by doing. So it is like Jeannette said, that it's about the chicken and the egg. So we create demand on the maritime side, then we have to incentivize supply, the demand is not high enough, then we have to find the way to bring market together. Stip mentions, for example, the double-sided auctions, which help to create this situation and also solve the problem of long-term revenue security need of the suppliers, and understandably short-term commitment from the ship operators who don't want to commit to very high prices now, which we expect to go down. ETS allowances is another type of mechanism, which we also mentioned in STIP, that we consider it for maritime. We would really seriously consider, and I hope we work together with DG Klima colleagues to make it happen, because I think this is one of the very efficient ways, and also guaranteeing that this benefit from ETS stays in the maritime sector.
There's a lot to do with hydrogen. I mean, there's so many projects that are ready for investment. So it's about permitting, it's about the electricity grid, it's about the investment, the mechanisms that are working or not. So we have to really give a stable long-term plan. I mean, it's 25 years until 2050, and I'm always saying that it's only 1 or 2 decisions by the industry to really set up their plans. And we have to make sure that the criteria are set that they make a positive decision. And this is what we need to do in these 25 years.
Okay, thanks. And at the same time, you know, we see all these deregulation, simplification push within the European Parliament, even from within the European Commission. But we have already clarified that the targets must remain, right? Perfect. Anais Rios. So, how can we avoid this time to set a target and then we are not able to meet it?
That's a big question. I think we need to, make sure we incentivize necessarily the e-fuel productions. That's important. So again, not just at the EU level, but also at the IMO level, making sure we do have a net zero framework that goes through. But also we need to start working on the demand of fossil fuel. So that goes through many different ways. We can talk about making sure we have retrofits of vessels for them to be more energy efficient, but also we can start talking about supply chains and maybe regionalization.
And on the retrofitting of vessels, if we, for example, retrofit a vessel for use biogas, for example, then that vessel could use also fossil gas, right? So what's the role of fossil gas in this decarbonization effort? This is something is not really clear to me.
It is, some say that it's transitional fuel, others say it's fuel in transition, meaning that if you have a powertrain which can run on LNG, it can also run on biogas, biomethane, or it can run on e-methane. E-methane at this moment is not really business-wise making any sense because you have enough biomethane, but it's not about the type of engine. It's not flocking into fossil fuel technology. It's the fuel that has to evolve. And equally hydrogen, most of the hydrogen around is now grey hydrogen. It's fossil-based hydrogen, so we can't say that it's per se cleaner, but the energy kind of life cycle needs to be cleaned for the future.
And then we have to look at definitions. I mean, first of all, in former regulations was only green hydrogen. Now we're also looking for blue and pink hydrogen on carbon captured and nuclear based. I mean, this is what we have. This is the flexibility that I was talking about. Not one choosing, but if we talk about hydrogen, also blue, green and pink hydrogen.
And just fuel EU targets will drive that this methane has to come bio and E, because if the carbon intensity reduction targets will go down, you can't comply anymore with LNG. You have to change your blend.
Okay, but it could be possible with a blending of the two. Mm. And are you in favor or against the use of methane, like fossil methane, for decarbonizing shipping?
You're asking me. We are looking for greener method. I mean, if you were talking about gas, I presume the LNG discussion. which is perfectly fine. It's transition, as mentioned. Methane, I would say, preferably, of course, green methane. So this is the change that we are making. This is the setup that we are doing. But you can do that from also, if you make all these fuels with, for example, carbon capture, I'm fine with that. This is also steps. So we can start the whole value chain, and then from there you can go greener.
Thanks a lot. So just to wrap up, because our time is up, I would like to ask you, what is the one message that you would like us to remember after today? First, Anais Royce.
I mean, for me, it's understanding that we have options already. We have electrifications, for example, for the ferries. We have wind propulsion that is scalable to the global fleet. So it's understanding that first, let's just like do what we can do as soon as possible and make sure that that's available for the operators. So energy efficiency first, and then also, of course, we need to scale up e-fuel. But I think, yeah, it's important to see we do have options, and let's not start with a defeated mind and just push for it.
Thanks. Jeannette Banjou?
Well, not be backed down by the IMO decisions or non-decisions. Let's push for the clean shipping. It's viable. Let's work on that. And let's make sure that if the acceleration, how is it possible? Let's keep it practical, keep it simple, and deregulate, but with the goals to make sure. But make sure that we can make the steps in these coming 25 years. I mean, this is the most important. Make sure that there's stability for the sector, and that there will be finances, whether it's by subsidies from the Commission or member states or whatever, but also from the banking system, the finance system. They especially have to deal with the inland shipping sector.
Thanks a lot. And Annika Krohn, the message that we have to remember after today.
I think my co-speakers have covered it already. I would just say that it is possible. We have proved that it is possible over the last 5 years, and we have to make it easier for the sector.
Okay, thanks a lot. So before closing this panel, let me thank our sponsor, OG Clean Fuels and Post Europe, for making this possible. I want to remember you that you can have a tour of this beautiful museum that is behind us, and that we will have lunch in the room on the left side. Thanks a lot for staying with us. See you at the next policy conference.